Hello, everybody. This is a conversation.
Hi.
Hello, everyone. This is a conversation that, so Eleanor wrote, and I'm going to put the link in the comments or inside the bio for this particular video. She wrote this brilliant article about relationships with people with schizoid personality disorder and what are sort of the markers and what it's like. And I just got nailed completely. And I was like, we're going to do a conversation about that because a lot of people ask, what do I do with this? What do I do with that? And so that's what the inspiration for this conversation came from. And so I started talking about that. And so anyway, I hand it over to you, Eleanor. Please comment about anything you want about any part of that.
Okay, well, it's interesting. I'll start with how you reconnect with your husband in an authentic way. And that's something that I start with my clients when I'm working remote face to face, it's a bit easier, but even then I do something not so dissimilar. I teach people to orient me and first to be with me and me with them, I with them. So I might start, someone gets on the screen and we're both carrying what happened before earlier in the day. We're trying to meet each other. So with many people, when this becomes like very obvious, it's not going to, we're both coming from somewhere, is I suggest we take 3 deep, slow breaths together with a longer out breath and just coordinate with each other and take a moment to be present and to see who you're with and to let the rest of the day before drop away so that we can actually be here together. And I will use we language if that's not offensive to people. Some people like we language and some people hate we language. So then I will suggest, and I teach this, and it's how I begin psychotherapy groups. That's where I learned it, but it's so valuable that I always say if people learn nothing else from me, they'll learn this one thing and it will make their relationships better.
Yeah.
And that's that we need to orient the person to what we're feeling and what we want from the encounter. And lots of times we get on the phone with someone, we tell them some story about our day or tragedy or happiness, and they just don't give us the response we want. And we're irritated or upset or disappointed. And that's because they have no idea what we're looking for from that story. So in the beginning of therapy, I'll say,
But let me interrupt for that second, but it's more, and I don't want to sidestep, or like sidetrack us, but sometimes also we don't even check in to see if hey, I want to tell you this story. Do you have 5 minutes? We don't even check in. We just sometimes just blah, 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 blah. So yes, keep going.
exactly. So I suggest that they take this moment to check in with themselves. That's the next thing. We do the 3 breaths formally or informally. Some of us just breathe and it's automatic. And then I suggest that they take a moment and go inside and see what they're feeling. And that feelings can be complex. They don't even have to know what they're feeling, but try and express whatever it is they find so that I know as best I can at this moment, and then orient me. If they have a goal for today's session or something that they want out of it or something important to tell me, this is a good time so that I can have it in the back of my mind, even if we don't deal with it first thing, then I know what you want. So this practice of connecting with the person through a few deep slow breaths, looking at them, and then going inside and checking with ourselves, what am I feeling? What do I need? What do I want? What am I looking for? And then expressing what you're feeling and what you're looking for. It doesn't have to be a long speech. It's just, I'm in session today and I really want, before the session is over, I'm still feeling weird about something that happened last session, or my mother said X to me, my husband, my wife, my so-and-so, my kids said B to me, and I said C, and I'm not sure if that was the right response, and I'm feeling guilty now, so I'd like to talk about that as well. So that way, I know what's going on. I know as much as something about why it's going on and what they want, and we can work it in. So
Yeah.
most of us don't think to orient other people.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I was schizoid and I was doing an orientation, which is not something that this would happen normally with people with schizoid personality disorder. They would be the last person to orient me. Once they can orient me, we know we have a successful therapy going. It might look like something like this. Well, I still don't know whether I can trust you. I'm not sure if I want to be here. I think I want to be here, but it makes me really uncomfortable being here and having to talk about personal things. I'm glad I get to sit in the same seat. I hate unpredictable. And your hair is different than when I last saw you. And did you do something to it? And please don't do anything surprising. If you're going to get up or you're going to say something that I'm not expecting, please give me a heads up warning. Is that okay with you? Can I expect that?
Oh, that's so brilliant. Oh my God, it's so brilliant. It's so much fun. This is so much fun. Like, so that's if they would even say something. First of all, they'd have to actually know all that stuff. That's like the bubble thoughts on top of their head. If you could read the bubble thoughts inside of their head, you know? It's funny, like I don't want to do too much anecdotal about myself, but like I have I remember one of our conversations, after our conversation, you ended up doing like these 2-card reading for me.
Yes.
And what came up was like so right on the money, which was that they were like, my whole life has been marked by like these 2 very dramatic, like diametrically opposed energies inside of me. One is like very grounded, need to know exactly what's going on, etc. And then the other one is just like complete wanting to be free and etc. So both of the, like when you're talking about that, it totally feels really good to my schizoid part. That's like, you know me, you recognize, so lovely. And then of course the other part is just like, can we have some freedom and some breath and some air, please, in the room? Like, let's just like, you know, prancercise or something, you know? All right. So how does that, now that I just went off on a tangent, how does that, so that's how it manifests in a relationship with a therapist.
Mhm.
How does a person with schizoid adaptation, what does that look like in relationships, either romantic or friendships? We can talk about work as well, but how does that manifest and show itself in those contexts?
Sure. And for people who haven't listened to perhaps the prior YouTubes in which we define schizoid, I'm just going to do a very quick 2-sentence thing, and you can get the other meanings from listening to, you can link to the other interviews where it might be better defined. A subgroup of my clients have come in a dissociated state to my office, very afraid of other people, very self-protective, not knowing that they can negotiate differences, and feeling like they have to keep their real authentic self buried somewhere so deep inside that nothing anyone ever says could ever see or touch it. I don't know they feel this way. They come to my office, and it's usually a direct reaction, this type of thing, to having some form of a childhood situation in which they were either abused, ignored, or there was massive misattunement and their needs were never met. And by the age of 7, they realize that in their mind, at the best as a 7-year-old can, that I cannot count on the adults who are supposed to take care of me to take care of me. I cannot even count on them to understand or see me for who I am. They don't. I can't count on them to protect me from anyone else. I guess I'm going to have to grow up and be very, very independent and make sure to take care of myself. And in fact, it's dangerous to even let them know I need something, because if they know I need it, they can use that against me to punish me or manipulate me. So I'm going to keep everything that I prize a secret fantasy. And I'm going to spend a lot of time in my fantasies with those secrets. And I'm not going to tell other people unless it's my very trusted therapist, the content of those fantasies, because the whole point of them is to have some form of safe human contact, even if it's only in my mind, with other people, without the input that is so threatening to me and so misattuned. So that's what.
Do you know the song Strumming My Pain with His Fingers, Singing My Life with His Words? Oh, like, I don't know about you all people, but pretty much nailed. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah,
Great.
when you have those issues, and we're also talking about splitting, because I use an object relations definition, which you can look up and it'll be in the other thing, which is, can we see ourselves in other people? Happy children who grow up in reasonably stable homes have been treated rather consistently as the same person, from whether they do something good or bad. Even when they're being punished, they know that their mother or father still cares about them,
Yeah.
sees them.
Yeah.
Kids who grow up in homes where the parents split, and you're either the good child who I love or the bad child who doesn't deserve love, or you're the good child who I treat well and the bad child who I ignore or punish, or your brother's the good child and you're the bad child. There's this kind of splitting. All humans who aren't neurologically impaired have the capacity to assimilate and integrate a view of themselves and other people that contain both liked and disliked traits.
Yeah.
But when we get into what's called personality disorders, that I refer to as adaptations in my book, we get into a situation where that couldn't be learned. There wasn't a good model. We weren't treated as if we were the same person. And our parents perhaps shifted back and forth between being loving and hateful to us, and we can't make an integration of that. So we switch back and forth. And the particular schizoid split is between, safe and unsafe.
Mm-hmm.
People are in the unsafe box, they're in the safe box.
Mm-hmm.
And within myself, there's a lot of, if you're schizoid, you really you have a very stark choice, you believe. If you're in a relationship, whoever is the most dominant controls everything, and you are the less dominant is that person's puppet. So, and if you're not in a relationship, then you feel so disconnected from the universe and other people that it becomes frightening. And you can go into existential despair. And the only time I hear the word existential is from college kids and schizoids, if you'll excuse. And schizoid is the name of a pattern. I'm just using it as shorthand.
Shorthand, yes.
But it's a very long term to say, I'm referring now to the pattern that is commonly called schizoid personality disorder, that I refer to as schizoid adaptations in my book, in which it has this and this. So for short, I will say the word schizoid, or something is schizoid-like, but no insult is intended, and there is no such thing as a schizoid. There's only a person who is currently manifesting a pattern of coping mechanisms and deficits that we call schizoid.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So now I can talk about the relationship patterns, and we will be a little bit on the same page. Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm like, this is already such a rich conversation. I'm like at the edge of my seat.
So I learned a lot about schizoid relationships from my clients' attempts at dating. And it's especially true now when we have all the dating apps. My husband used to say, when they asked, what did I do for a living? She helps people get married.
like
a young therapist.
Like a good yenta, yes.
Yes, I had, younger clients, and they were all wanting to have their first marriage. Now I have older clients who have been through a divorce or a death, and I still have some younger ones, and they're thrown into this new dating scene where you first meet people online. You never, it's a two steps away to ever talk to them, even on the phone.
Yes.
So you get an impression of people, and most people are trying to make a good impression on the other person, and they're not, they don't announce, well, I have real intimacy issues. I've never been able to make a relationship work. They usually don't put this in their profile. And
Yeah.
I'm a very poor bet for a relationship, because when I feel safe and like you're unavailable, I will chase you and be very loving, and I'll feel free to be myself, and you'll be utterly charmed, because really my true self is quite nice. But the moment you're free or you want me, I will close down, disassociate, and miraculously, no matter how much I loved you 20 minutes before, I will now feel nothing for you, or I will feel frightened and trapped and withdraw suddenly, and you'll never know what happened. So
Yes.
that's not in my dating profile, but if I were,
Somehow, I don't know if that would work, but yes, I see why you would not, why that person would not put that in there. First of all, they wouldn't even, some people who have, that's hysterical, by the way, but some people think it's the other person that's the problem. Like,
yes, I'm going to start with this. This is where I had a client, and I'm obviously not giving details
yeah,
for protection of privacy, but she was a very lovely woman, and she had been married, and now she had been dating someone seriously. And she came to me after her girlfriends were tired of hearing about their breakups, because the guy was kind of fabulous and she loved him, and he said he loved her. But he had broken up with her by the time I met her 3 or 4 times already,
mm,
always after about 2 weeks. Now, the courtship was longer than the time they were together. Each time, the first time they had a lovely courtship, they both thought they were wildly in love, that this was going to progress to marriage. They both were adults. They both had had other relationships. They were both supposedly looking for a real partner. And so she was delighted. This was before I met her, before her friends got tired of the story. And they went together. And after 2 weeks, he left her and he said, it's all your fault. There's something wrong with you. I can't trust you. You're really cold and whatever. And he left her. And then a year later, and she was heartbroken.
mhm,
This was terribly sudden. There was no warning.
mhm,
All of a sudden, one day from warm, he was cold and dismissive and blaming. And now people who know about narcissism would think this guy's a narcissist or something. He's found other supply, people say online, but this wasn't the case. The case was that he didn't understand that when he actually was in a real relationship, it triggered unconsciously traumatic memories for him of being trapped with his mother.
mm.
And that was not in his awareness. He had not had any therapy at that point. He didn't know anything other than it must be her fault. I love her. Why isn't this going well? Why do I feel the need to totally remove myself? So the next year, he tried to get her back. A year later, it was almost exactly a year. He says, I went to therapy. I realized it's not all your fault. I have a role in this. So I really want to try again. I think I could do it this time. I promise I won't blame you. I've spoken to a therapist. She showed me I have some issues. So I really feel prepared. I think, and she's going, no, no, no. My heart was broken. I'm barely healed. I just started dating other people. He does an all out, love bombing. Again, people would assume this is a narcissistic guy. He's trying to get her back. He's hoovering her. Well, he is, but it's not for narcissistic reasons. She takes him back. 2 weeks later, just about, she notices he stopped holding her hand when they walk on the street. And she asks him about it. And he said, well, I didn't want to tell you because I don't want to go through it again. I don't want to put you through in it, but it's just not right. Something's wrong. I don't know what it is. This time I can't say if it's me or you. I'm not going to blame you, but I just don't want to be in this relationship with you.
By the way, if you hear background noise, there's some like construction that's happening in an apartment by there. So
Okay.
I don't want that to distract you. Keep going.
So if I'm taking too long also on this,
No, keep going. This is great.
this has been a lot of people's story, but it's a little more extreme. So he persuades her to give him another chance based on that he's been to therapy. So she feels, well, this is reasonable. I learned things. I'm in therapy, whatever, she was before me, because she was so heartbroken by him. So she takes him back. And, any case, this happens every year. It's a new thing. Every year he's convinced he can do it. And every year now she's just looking for the signs of him cooling,
Yes.
of this radical change.
Yes.
So
keep going, because I have some things on
her
from the inside how to talk about. Yeah.
Each time that he breaks off with her, of course she's heartbroken. Her girlfriends all know. Now she is not, I saw her. This is not a particularly troubled person from a very difficult home. Yeah, she's a bit naive, but she really cares about this guy. And each time she's convinced, because if it was her saying this to another person, she would be able to do it. If she said, I really worked on it and I feel I could do it, she'd be able to do it. So she has no reason to doubt him and in fact, she feels good that he cares about her so much that he keeps working on it.
Yeah.
So she sees this as a good sign. Well, I get her around the 5th iteration of this, where now she's feeling like she's given up a lot of her life to this guy. And it's really unfair. And she's lost these good years, these 5 good years, believing in him. And now he wants her back again. What should I do? Now, by this time, he's saying, I know it's totally my fault. I know I don't deserve a chance back. But it keeps going and moving along this thing. But he didn't solve it, really. When to make the long story short, eventually she stopped giving him other chances, and he started doing this with another woman.
Yeah, I mean, from my own experience inside this particular maze, me being the guy, me being on the guy's end, part of how I solved it first was I entered into relationships that were always on a certain level. This was for like a number of years, especially when I went back into, I showed more adaptations towards schizoid personality disorder. I showed more of that. For a while I didn't, but then there was like a lot of more trauma that happened, and then I went back into that. I went into relationships where like it was really, love was never going to happen. So this way I could feel the sense of love. I could feel that. And then I was married for a while, and just thought that that's how it was supposed to be, sort of like this dead spot. And then but now in my relationship currently with my husband, because now it's a whole other ball of wax. Like we're in a relationship where my like, when I tell you my pit bull stubborn determination to have it be deeply connected and alive and intimate, like my relationship with, I can get emotional about it. My relationship with my husband is like something that genuinely I never thought as a child. Like it was one of those things that like sort of lived beyond what was even possible for me. And it's just one of those things that like I recognized when I met him early on, and I'm just going to get emotional about it. I recognized it early on that it was a unique relationship, and that I was going to have to contend with myself. And so I ongoing have bouts of, I don't know who you are. And it happens in a second. Like what you're talking about, it happens in a second.
Yes, it's very, very quick.
And it's a sudden thing. And so what I do is I'm just the opposite of what people with schizoid adaptations are instinctually thrown to do. I'm very honest and I tell the truth, like ongoing. And I don't
Well,
mean like a bludgeoner. I mean like right now I'm feeling this way. Let's slow down and like I literally work with the parts of myself that want to sort of slow down because my constant commitment is to be connected to him and to feel love with him like ongoing as much as possible. And so I don't let it germinate into some cancer inside of our relationship.
well, that's wonderful. And that's a great solution. And obviously you had a lot of work that you did that gave you the ability and the confidence and the tools to do that. What I see is um, sometimes people will give an example. I've seen the opposite to the first person
Mhm.
in that I have people who come to therapy who were dating and they say, what does this mean? Because now they've been burned once or twice. They say, he tells me that I shouldn't, I've just met this guy and I really like him. We've been exchanging texts and online things. I met him on a dating app. We're very compatible. It seems we have a lot in common, but he never wants to make any dates in advance. He wants to just see if he's ready to come over on a certain day and I have to be there. Is this narcissistic? And I said, well, tell me more about it. What does he say to you? He says, well, I want to tell you that all I want is sex from a relationship and maybe a little companionship. I don't want to hurt you, but I'm not looking to be trapped in a long-term relationship and not get out. And therefore, I don't want you I don't want to make any promises to you to be in a relationship with you or for you to expect it. And I want to be totally honest with you about it because I don't want to hurt you.
Mm.
So I have men who know themselves sometimes and they've said that to the person. And it could be the opposite way with a woman. I had a woman that should have been able to say that,
Yeah,
but
I've said that. I've been that woman who just was like, I knew myself well enough where I was like, this is what I want. And but I wanted more. I was able to be like intimate where I was like, I want it, but I don't want to be trapped. And so we will fall in love for 3 hours and then I want to just go away. That was like, that was more like me. That we'll fall in love for like a week and then I want to go and be free.
well, that's why I use the movie Up in the Air. The George Clooney is
Yeah,
in that
yeah,
movie,
yeah.
and the woman who is also in one of the movies around singing was in it. I forget her name. And he just has these short, sexy relationships with people he meets. His job involves a lot of travel. It's almost constant travel. He's firing people for a living so
Mhm.
that the HR doesn't have to do the face-to-face firing, and that's his gig. And all his friends work in airports that he visits, so they're not friendships outside of his traveling. And he has a sexual relationship with a woman who he meets because she travels for business, and that's most of the movie is sufficient till he decides he
Yeah, and
wants.
his home is like devoid of any personality. There's no real sense of it's just a place to literally lie. There's nothing. It's like the other aspects of his life are the thing that give him life, and home is really like nothing to a certain degree.
Yeah, and one of the things that I learned from my teacher at the Masterson Institute when James Masterson was alive, the director of training, Ralph Klein, and I'll give him a commercial. I don't know where to find him, but you can find his work in the book Disorders of the Self. He does the first third. He edited it with James Masterson, Ralph Klein, about the self in exile. And what he said and what he taught is that most of the people who make a schizoid adaptation, and they use the word schizoid disorders of the self.
Mm.
Everyone has a sort of a different favorite term for personality disorders. Most of them find an adaptation that suits them where they get enough company or contact that they don't feel isolated and in exile and just drifting in space by themselves, but they don't put themselves in a situation where they can feel trapped and a prisoner of the other person.
Mm.
So some of these relationships, you can use the up in the air. You travel for business, you meet people, and you have a passionate relationship for 3 hours or 3 days, but you know you're leaving. I had a client who loved traveling for business because that's what he did.
Mhm.
And he didn't travel every week, every month, but he knew that he would have a relationship when he traveled, and that was sufficient. A similar version to that is you fall in love with someone who's geographically unavailable and can't move.
Mhm.
Or you fall in love with someone who is married. And the sad thing about the marital thing is usually the people who do that don't know they're not in love, that they are in love. They feel the love, but they don't know that they're going to snap out of it in 2 seconds and become disassociated when the person is actually free. So if the person who's geographically unavailable or married becomes available, all the good feelings, they will cut off and split, and it'll be that second. I had someone that got off, that the person that was so in love with them that they had been in contact with, they were going to meet for the first time. They were planning on getting married. They were so compatible over computers.
Yeah, that's not a real, I mean, like, that's a relationship in a certain container. In fact, I have someone I know right now who's meeting someone for the first time, and I'm just like,
That's right.
understand that you are starting a brand new relationship from the ground up. It literally, all of that is like, it's sort of a bubble in and of itself, and you might be able to refer to back to it at a certain point, but you are meeting someone anew. Like,
Oh, what happened to her was she went to the airport because she was really excited to meet him, and he wanted her at the airport. He was really excited for this meeting. He got off the plane, he went in, saw her, said, "I can't do this," and turned around. No explanation.
oh goodness
I had
gracious.
to come back and process it with her. And the likeliest explanation, because of course she hadn't done anything to annoy him yet. There was
No.
nothing. He just looked at her, and all of a sudden the penny dropped, and he realized he couldn't do that. And he didn't want to, he couldn't even stay and explain. He was so unaware. And he was so frightened, he just had to run. So you get these situations where the person pursues for a very long time a married person, for example. Now, why do they do this? Are they really trying to break up a marriage, ruin people's life? No, it's that they're responding to their heart being open. They don't understand their heart is open because they feel safe. They think they feel safe because they're in love with this person. They feel safe because the person's unavailable. So they're convinced that if that person leaves their current mate, and this could be male or female, that they will marry them. And I hold my breath when I hear something like that, because just as often they have that schizoid reaction that you described, that instant coldness, or a feeling of dread, and that person has just divorced somebody. They've
Yeah,
sometimes left children.
radically changed their lives, like like literally dismantled the life they had for this one dream that was there. Yeah.
In one case, the person um, went back to in this case, it was a woman, and who was asked to drop her life. And she was heartbroken, but she went back to her husband. She begged forgiveness, told him the story. He took her back. She probably had to do penance for the rest of their marriage, but she was really punished. But she'd been cheating on her husband for a long time. So more often than not, the person isn't able to repair the relationship they left because it was so grueling and so uncomfortable and painful for everybody involved.
Yeah. There's lies, there's betrayal, there's like, deceit, there's all kinds of stuff that goes on inside of it. So it's not just the affair, it's all of the ruptures that happen as a result.
Now we're talking about a range of people when we talk about schizoid relationships, from people who cannot tolerate being in front of another living person very long, to people who can marry, have children, and make a schizoid adaptation, at the other end. Like, what will that look like? And it might look like, well, if you marry another schizoid, you might be these two scientists. I'm thinking of the scientist couple, where they're both very they're teaching, they're both in the sciences.
Very independent, very like, yeah.
They like to have, they enjoy having breakfast together and reading the news and discussing the news of the day. Nothing more intimate than that. They both go about their lives separately. They meet at night. Maybe they'll watch a TV show together. Maybe they'll talk about their latest science project with each other. They're both academics. And so you have this very cool relationship that's mutually satisfying. And if they don't have children, this can really work out. Once you have children, children need a little more warmth than that. They need a little more caretaking. And
Just a little more.
now I've had schizoid clients that were very good parents.
Yes.
I have one. He had terrible parents. He had a narcissistic father, a borderline mother, but the type that were devaluing and screaming and we never wanted you, just, and then he's the nicest person. He was born nice, genetically. He was born with a code of honor that he kept to. He was born a decent person, and then other bad things happened to him. But he was able to marry somebody with a minor personality disorder because he'd been in therapy by then. He knew his diagnosis by then and had a child, and he's an excellent father, but a very sensitive soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
like part of schizoid is that you're just like deeply sensitive, like deeply, deeply sensitive.
Yeah. If you're an not everybody can become a narcissist or a schizoid. It's a matter of a temperamental or borderline. You have a temperamental match. You're born a certain temperament. You're not born into a diagnosis. And then you have that temperament and you're given certain parents. And you try and get love and affection from your parents, and they try and get whatever they want from you. And, it could be a really bad mismatch.
Mm-hmm. So I have a question, since you've painted a pretty clear picture of what it's like, the pitfalls of being in relationship with someone who has on the spectrum, depending on where the person falls on that spectrum, someone who has adaptations that skew towards schizoid. So let's talk about both sides. Let's talk about what are your I want to say like suggestions or things you want to say about people who are involved with someone who has schizoid personality adaptations. And then also let's do the other side. If someone has schizoid, because I have a lot of people who come on to also I have both people who are like involved with people who have schizoid personality disorders or are starting to discover that, or people who have discovered that in themselves, that they have those kinds of adaptations and they want to be in relationship. And so whichever one you want to address first, let's talk about like what's the map or the way out of something like that, working through something like that.